Blood sprayed as Private Gerald Hicks gunned down alien after alien, fighting like a man possessed against a horde of 800,000 genetically engineered Karnak super soldiers. The once proud Vidian cities had been reduced to rubble, bodies scattered in the streets, smoke billowing from the ruined buildings. Hicks walked through the desolation in his advanced combat exosuit, leaving a trail of slaughtered aliens in his wake. He was humanity's last hope. Earth had sent him to defend the Vidians from the relentless Karnak invasion, but he arrived to find their civilization in ruins, armies shattered, leaders dead. Only a few Vidian survivors remained, huddled in the wreckage like frightened rats. Among them was Fenris, a battle-hardened warrior who had watched the Karnak butcher his entire family. Fenris glared at Hicks with suspicion and hostility, seeing the human as just another meddling outsider. But as waves of Karnak poured into the ruins, Hicks and Fenris fought back to back, mowing down the aliens with grim efficiency. A bond formed between the human and Vidian warriors as they battled against impossible odds. Neither of them would stop until every last Karnak invader was dead or driven from Vidius Prime. The Vidians needed Hicks to prevail. The alternative was the total extermination of their species, and the human was determined to win this fight, no matter how many aliens he had to kill. Together they would hatch a desperate plan to hit the Karnak where it hurt most and turn the tide of this war. Hicks and Fenris crept through the twisting corridors of the Karnak command center, clad in stolen alien armor. Their fabricated identity chips broadcast falsified data, fooling the base's security systems into perceiving them as just two more Karnak drones. Hicks gripped his pulse rifle as they approached a sealed blast door. He nodded to Fenris. The Vidian tapped a command into his gauntlet, overriding the lock. The door slid open. 4 Karnak soldiers stood inside, their backs to the infiltrators. Fenris lunged, his blade slicing through the neck of the nearest alien. Hicks dropped 2 more with quick bursts from his rifle. The last Karnak reached for its weapon, but Fenris pounced, driving his sword through its chest. They dragged the bodies out of sight and continued deeper into the facility, leaving a trail of stealthy carnage in their wake. Hicks gutted a Karnak officer with his combat knife. Fenris snapped the neck of a hulking alien guard. Finally, they reached the central control room. Hicks jacked Ada into a data port and set to work hacking the Karnak systems, while Fenris watched the door, rifle at the ready. "I'm in," Hicks reported, his fingers flying over the controls. "Holy shit!" "What is it?" Fenris hissed. "The Karnak. They're being controlled by some kind of hive mind AI called the Overmind. If we can take it out, their whole army will go down." Alarms blared. The door exploded inward. A horde of Karnak soldiers surged into the room, weapons blazing. Fenris opened fire, his rifle bucking as he cut down the first wave. But more aliens kept coming, forcing him to give ground. "Whatever you're going to do it fast," the Vidian yelled over the gunfire. Hicks typed furiously, sweat beading his brow. A slug ricocheted off his armor. Warning klaxons howled. He could hear Fenris roaring in pain and rage as a dozen Karnak bore down on him. With a final keystroke, Hicks uploaded the virus. The Overmind shrieked and thrashed as the poison code tore through its systems. One by one, the Karnak soldiers collapsed, neural implants fried by the feedback. Fenris slumped against a console, bleeding from a dozen wounds. His armor was shredded, but he still clung to life. Hicks hauled the Vidian to his feet as a self-destruct countdown began. They staggered from the burning command center and watched from a distant ridge as it vanished in a flower of nuclear fire. "It's not over," Fenris rasped. "The Overmind, it was just a puppet. The real target is the Karnak hive node." Hicks frowned. "Where is it?" "On their homeworld, in uncharted space." Fenris met his gaze. "But there's a way to reach it. An ancient Vidian starship, built for long-range exploration. It's been dormant for centuries, but with the right repairs." Hicks clenched his fist. "Then that's our next mission. We're going to find that ship, get it flying again, and take this fight to the Karnak's front door. We'll destroy their hive and end this war, no matter what it takes." The journey to the hidden shipyard, took 3 grueling weeks through the harsh Vidian wilderness. Hicks and Fenris trekked across toxic swamps, scaled jagged mountain ranges, and slogged through irradiated wastelands. By the time they reached their destination, both warriors were exhausted and low on supplies. But their mission had only just begun. As they approached the ancient hangar, a phalanx of fierce Vidian warriors emerged to block their path. The tribal fighters were clad in crude armor, fashioned from scavenged starship hulls, and wielded an assortment of makeshift melee weapons, vibroblades, plasmaglaves, and neurolash whips. A massive, heavily scarred warrior stepped forward. He introduced himself as Drax, leader of the clan that had guarded the Vidian starship for generations. Drax made it clear that he had no intention of allowing a human and an outsider Vidian to defile the sacred vessel. Hicks tried to reason with the tribal chief, explaining the desperate situation and the need to use the ship against the Karnak. But Drax spat on the ground, disgusted by the mere notion of turning the ancient Vidian relic into a weapon. With diplomacy failing, Fenris stepped forward. He challenged Drax to Kyra, a primal duel to the death that would decide the rightful leadership of the tribe. The towering war chief gave a slow nod, accepting the ritual combat. Hicks watched in awe as the 2 Vidian warriors clashed in a whirlwind of slashing blades and thunderous blows. Fenris fought with the savage fury of a beast unleashed, his sword cleaving through flesh and bone, but Drax was a formidable foe, as strong as an ox and twice as mean. The battle raged for hours, both fighters drenched in indigo blood, neither willing to yield. In the end, it was Fenris who emerged victorious, driving his blade through Drax's primary heart. The defeated chief collapsed to his knees, choking on his own blood. With his final breath, he proclaimed Fenris the new war chief. The surviving warriors bowed their heads, honor-bound to serve the victor of Kyra. Fenris wasted no time in putting his new followers to work. Under his command, the Vidians swarmed over the ancient starship like army ants, repairing its decayed systems and retrofitting its weapons. Hicks oversaw the technical aspects of the restoration, amazed by the arcane technologies incorporated into the vessel's design. During the long days and nights of labor, Hicks and Fenris took the opportunity to swap war stories. The human confessed his role in creating the rogue AI that had destroyed Earth, a sin that he sought to atone for with every waking moment. In turn, the Vidian spoke of the agony of losing his lifemate and spawns to the Karnak butchers, and of the vow of bloody vengeance he had sworn in their memory. But the newfound bond between the human and Vidian was soon put to the test. A massive Karnak battle fleet appeared in the skies above the shipyard, disgorging waves of heavily armed soldiers. The Vidian warriors rallied to defend the starship, giving their lives to buy Hicks and Fenris the precious minutes needed to bring the mighty vessel to life. As the tide of Karnak pressed in from all sides, the human and Vidian sprinted up the boarding ramp, pulse blasts and plasma bolts filling the air around them. They stumbled into the control pit just as a searing beam of energy ripped through the hangar, vaporizing the rear half of the ship. Hicks slammed the hatch controls while Fenris fired up the ancient propulsion drive. The starship, last hope of the Vidian race, blasted free of the crumbling shipyard and clawed for open space, Karnak drones and fighters in hot pursuit. The battle for the future had begun. Pulse blasts tore through the ancient Vidian ship's hull as Hicks and Fenris sprinted up the boarding ramp. The Karnak forces swarmed over the crumbling shipyard defenses like a surging tide of death. Fenris slapped the ramp controls and grabbed a bulkhead as the hatch slammed shut. In the control pit, Hicks jacked into the ship's AI core. Nexus, initiate emergency power-up sequence, authorization code Fenris Gamma 9er. The AI's holographic avatar flickered to life, an androgynous silver humanoid. Identity confirmed. Greetings, War Chief Fenris. I am detecting multiple hostile contacts. The ship has suffered extreme degradation from centuries of dormancy. Weapon systems are offline. Propulsion is at 30% capacity. And I don't care if we have to fly out of here on farts and prayers. Get us airborne now, Fenris snarled. The deck plates shuddered as ancient engines coughed to life. Millennia-old anti-grav generators thrummed with building power. The ship lurched skyward, plowing through the crumbling roof of the hangar. "Incoming plasma missiles," Nexus reported. "Evasive maneuvers impossible. Brace for impact." The ship bucked and heaved as superheated plasma blasts hammered its faltering shields. Alarms shrieked, and acrid smoke boiled from overloaded conduits. Hicks clung to the command console. "Reroute power from life support. Pump everything we've got into the engines and inertial dampeners." Fenris manned the ship's weapon systems, unleashing searing beams of particle fire at the swarms of Karnak drones and fighters pursuing them. The Vidian's face twisted into a feral snarl as he burned alien craft from the sky. But it wasn't enough. The ship shuddered and groaned as more plasma blasts found their mark. Armor plating peeled away, and internal fires raged out of control. "We're losing power," Hicks shouted over the cacophony of destruction. "We don't have enough thrust to achieve escape velocity." Fenris pounded a fist against the bulkhead. "Wecker Dunacht. We didn't come this far to die now." Hicks stared at the holographic tactical display, brain racing. They were caught between the planet's gravity well and the attacking Karnak ships. The Vidian warriors on the ground were being slaughtered wholesale. Suddenly the human had a flash of desperate inspiration. "Nexus, plot a course straight through the thickest part of the ground battle. Such an action poses extreme risk to—" "Do it!" Hicks roared. The AI complied, angling the dying ship into a steep dive. Hicks sprinted to the nearest airlock, Mag clamping his rifle to his exosuit. "Fenris, keep those weapons firing. Buy me as much time as you can." The Vidian opened his mouth to object, but the fierce light in the human's eyes made him swallow his protests. "Die well, Hicks of Earth," he growled instead. Hicks nodded, then launched himself into open space. His exosuit thrusters flared as he hurtled towards the raging planet-side battle. Below, Vidian warriors and Karnak soldiers tore into each other with savage abandon, clashing in a howling maelstrom of blood and fire. And boring down on that anarchic hellscape was a massive Karnak plasma missile, its contrail cutting an arc of doom through the smoke-choked sky. Hicks angled his exosuit, aiming himself head-on at the incoming projectile. His targeting reticle flickered red as the missile locked onto his tiny armored form. At the last possible second, Hicks twisted and slapped a bulky disc onto the missile's nose, an experimental EMP grenade of his own design. The human wrenched his body away as the disc detonated in a blinding flash of ionized particles. The plasma missile erupted in a cataclysmic blast, ripping itself to atoms. The detonation spawned an electromagnetic shockwave that scythed across the battlefield, shorting out delicate Karnak circuitry and overloading power cores. Fighters dropped from the sky like poisoned insects. Drones froze in place, neural relays slagged. On the ground, Vidian warriors seized the moment, falling upon their stunned and reeling foes with howls of triumph. Karnak soldiers died by the score, hacked to pieces and torched by energy blades. In orbit, Fenris felt a surge of savage joy as the Karnak ships ceased firing. The crippled Vidian craft clawed for open space on straining engines, tearing free of the gravity well and streaking into the void. The Vidian scanned the sensor logs with rising desperation, searching for any sign of Hicks, but the readouts showed only billowing smoke and flame, the drifting corpses of Karnak fighters. "Wait!" There, amid the carnage, a faint signal. The IFF squawk of a human exosuit. Fenris magnified the visual feed, enhancing the fuzzy image. It resolved into a familiar armored figure, battered and scorched, but still intact, still drawing breath. Fenris worked the controls with shaking fingers, guiding the ship's grappling beam to snare Hicks's limp form and haul him aboard. The human tumbled through the airlock and collapsed on the deck, exosuit servos whining in protest. Fenris knelt and popped the suit's release clamps, peeling the human free of the crumpled armor. Hicks groaned and opened his eyes, coughing weakly. Did we make it?" he croaked. Fenris hauled the human to his feet, steadying him against the bulkhead. "We made it. Your plan, it worked. The Karnak are in full retreat." Hicks managed a shaky grin. New Knew that EMP grenade would come in handy. He coughed again, flecking his lips with blood. Fenris eyed him with concern. You're hurt, that blast nearly killed you. I've had worse, besides we're not done yet. Hicks straightened, wiping his mouth. Nexus, set course for the Karnak homeworld. It's time we finish this, once and for all. The AI chirped an acknowledgement. The Vidian ship accelerated to FTL with a shuddering lurch, streaking towards the heart of darkness, towards the final battle. Hicks and Fenris exchanged a silent look, a wealth of shared pain and purpose passing between them. They had started this journey as reluctant allies, the last champions of broken and bereaved species. Now they were something more, brothers in arms, fellow survivors, warriors with nothing left to lose. And they would see this through to the bitter end, no matter the cost, for their fallen kin, for the future of their races. The fight was far from over, but they were ready. Come what may, they would face it. Together. As the battered Vidian ship hurtled through the void towards the Karnak homeworld, Hicks and Fenris stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. Nexus had plotted the fastest route, but it would still take days to reach their destination. Days filled with tension and uncertainty. Hicks paced restlessly, his mind racing. The weight of the coming battle pressed down on him like a physical force. This was it, the final confrontation, the end of the line. Win or lose, there would be no going back. He glanced at Fenris, seeing his own determination mirrored in the Vidian's eyes. They had come so far, sacrificed so much. Failure was not an option. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of FTL, the swirling vortex of hyperspace giving way to the gleaming orb of the Karnak homeworld. But instead of the bleak, militarized hellscape they had expected, the planet that filled the view screen was a lush garden world, its verdant continents wrapped in swirls of white cloud. This can't be right, Fenris growled. Nexus, confirm our position. Coordinates verified, War Chief. This is the Karnak homeworld, designation Zarkos Prime. Hicks frowned at the readouts. I'm not detecting any orbital defenses. No battle stations, no minefields. It's like they're not even expecting an attack. It could be a trap, Fenris warned. Maybe, but we can't turn back now. Hicks straightened his shoulders. Take us in, Nexus. Prepare for atmospheric entry. The ship knifed through the skies of Zarkos Prime, and details began to resolve on the screens. Towering crystalline spires rising from sprawling cities, great swathes of farmland and forest, rivers and lakes sparkling under a golden sun. I'm picking up massive lifeform readings, Hicks reported, fingers flying over the controls. But they're all concentrated underground, in some kind of tunnel network. It's so deep the scans can barely penetrate it. Fenris hissed through clenched teeth. The hive, it has to be. They set the ship down in a remote highland region, far from any signs of civilization. The ramp lowered, and they stepped out onto the surface of Zarkos Prime, weapons at the ready. The air was warm and sweet, rich with the scent of alien flowers. A gentle breeze rustled the purple-leafed trees. In the distance, strange bird-like creatures circled and called. It was beautiful, peaceful, a far cry from the blasted hellscapes of Vidius Prime. This world is not what I expected, Fenris admitted quietly. Could we have been wrong about the Karnak all this time? Hicks shook his head. They butchered your people, Fenris, slaughtered them like animals. That kind of evil doesn't just go away. The Vidian warrior nodded grimly. You're right, let's finish this once and for all. They trekked through the wilderness, following the coordinates Nexus had provided. Karnak patrols converged on their position, but Hicks and Fenris cut them down with ruthless efficiency, leaving a trail of twitching corpses in their wake. By nightfall they had reached the hive entrance, a cyclopean archway of black stone that plunged into the bowels of the earth. Strange runes were carved into its surface, glowing with an eerie red light. Hicks glanced at Fenris. The Vidian's face was set in a mask of grim resolve. Once more into the breach, the human murmured. Together, they stepped through the archway and descended into the abyss. The tunnel walls pulsed with organic light, a vascular network of bioluminescent veins. The air grew thick and humid, laced with alien spores. Hicks consulted his scanner. Nexus is still tracking our progress, but the signal's getting weaker the deeper we go. We could be walking into a dead zone. Then we'd better move quickly, Fenris growled. They pushed deeper into the maze, following the twisting passages ever downward. Karnak warriors swarmed from shadowed alcoves and branching tunnels, their carapaces glistening in the eerie light. Hicks and Fenris fought like men possessed, their weapons roaring, blades flashing. Acid blood sprayed and chitin shattered. But even as they slaughtered the defenders, Hicks began to notice things that didn't add up. The Karnak fought fiercely, but there was a strange desperation to their actions, an almost suicidal zeal. And the deeper they went, the more sophisticated the tunnel architecture became, less a mindless warren and more an intentional, intelligent design. Fenris, I'm not sure the Karnak are what we thought they were. Hicks panted as they paused in an intersection, chests heaving. This hive, it's not just some feral nest. There's something more going on here. The Vidian wiped blood from his eyes, mandibles clicking. It doesn't matter what they are. They slaughtered my people. They have to pay. They clashed with wave after wave of Karnak warriors, slowly battling their way into the very heart of the hive. And there, in a vaulted chamber pulsing with eldritch energies, they found the Overmind. But it was not some monstrous, inhuman thing as they had imagined. Instead, it resembled nothing so much as a great tree of light and crystal, its branches reaching up to brush the distant ceiling, its roots spreading out in all directions. And it spoke to them. Welcome, Hicks of Earth, Fenris of Vidius. I have been waiting for you. For its voice was a resonance that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the mind, each word a thrumming wave of psychic force. Hicks clutched his head, fighting to stay focused. What are you? I am the Overmind, the guiding intelligence of the Karnak. We are not your enemies. Fenris snarled in fury. You attacked my world, slaughtered my people. And for that I am deeply sorry. The invasion of Vidius Prime, it was an act of desperation, not malice. My children are dying, Fenris. Images flooded into Hicks's mind. Visions of a world in its death throes, its biosphere collapsing, cities crumbling to ruin. He saw the Karnak struggling to survive, their hive networks unraveling, eggs withering in poisoned birthing chambers. Zarkos Prime is doomed, the Overmind continued. Millennia of exploitation have stripped it of life. When I sensed Vidius, sensed its verdant abundance, I believed we had found salvation, a new home. Fenris clenched his fists. So you tried to take it from us? I acted from a desire to preserve my species, to secure our future at any cost. But I see now the suffering we inflicted upon your kind. I am sorry. Hicks shook his head, mind reeling. What do you want from us? To end this conflict. My children are not conquerors, Hicks. We are builders, thinkers, dreamers. All we want is a chance to begin anew, to find a place in this universe. Fenris growled. You expect us to just forgive and forget, after everything you've done? The Overmind pulsed with sorrow. I do not ask for forgiveness, only for mercy, for understanding. If you destroy me, you condemn my entire race to extinction, billions of lives snuffed out in an instant. Hicks closed his eyes, a war raging in his heart. He thought of all the death and devastation he had seen, all the friends and innocents lost to this conflict. But then he thought of Earth, of his own sins, his own failures. Who was he to play the judge and executioner of an entire species? There has to be another way, he said slowly, some kind of compromise. Fenris whirled on him. Compromise with these monsters? Think about it, Fenris. If we wipe them out, how are we any different from them? How many more have to die before the killing stops? The Vidian trembled with barely contained rage and anguish. For a long moment, Hicks thought he might lash out, damn them all to oblivion. But then his shoulders slumped. The fight drained out of him like water from a shattered glass. "What did you have in mind?" he asked quietly. Hicks turned back to the Overmind. "You said all you wanted was a new home. Then let's find you one, an uninhabited world, far from Vidian space. Somewhere you can start over without bloodshed." The Overmind pulsed thoughtfully. "Such a world, yes, that could work. I will begin scouting suitable locations immediately." "And in return you'll withdraw all your forces from Vidius Prime, leave the system and never come back?" "You have my word, Hicks of Earth. Vidius will be free of us now and forever." Fenris stepped forward. "I want more than words. I want a blood oath, sworn on the graves of my slain kin." The Overmind inclined a shimmering branch. "Then let it be done. Before the eyes of your fallen, I solemnly vow that my children shall trouble Vidius no more. This war is over." Hicks felt a wave of exhaustion and relief wash over him. It was done. Somehow, against all odds, they had found a way. But even as the Karnak began their long withdrawal, even as he and Fenris returned to Vidius Prime as heroes and liberators, Hicks knew their victory was tainted by compromise and sorrow. The Vidians had survived, but at a terrible cost. Their cities lay in ruins, their population decimated, their innocence shattered. They looked to Fenris as a leader, but Hicks could see the bitter anguish in his eyes, the knowledge that he had let the butchers of his family escape to spread their taint to another unsuspecting world. And Hicks himself, he was a broken man. He had seen too much, done too much to ever go back to the life he had known. The sins of his past, the ghosts of his failures, would haunt him forever. In the end, there was only one path left to him. As the Vidians began the long, slow work of rebuilding, Hicks bid a quiet farewell to Fenris and slipped away into the night. He would wander the stars, a solitary pilgrim seeking redemption in the void. He would be a sword against the darkness, a shield for the innocent and helpless. It was all he had left, all he knew how to be. And so the tale of Hicks and Fenris ended, not with a bang but a whimper, a universe saved but tainted by sorrow and regret. For in the end there are no true victories in war, only loss and grief and the bitter taste of might-have-beens. Such is the way of things, in an uncaring cosmos. Such is the price of being human. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.